I want to get to the pundits, and then I want to end on the Jordan Mailata quote, because I think it is the thing that gives the most hope, and it's the thing that makes you feel probably the best about the Eagles' chance of going home with a victory this week, perhaps even winning the Super Bowl. Stephen A. Smith had a big thing about Jalen Hurts and about narratives around quarterback. And the question on First Take was something around which QB can change their own narrative on Sunday. Which quarterback could change the narrative around themselves the most on Sunday? And Stephen A. Smith picked Jalen Hurts. I believe Cam Newton picked Jaden Daniels, and I think Orlovsky picked Josh Allen. We only really care about the comment about Jalen Hurts. I want to go out to Stephen A. Smith for a second because he raises a very good point about Hurts and about how he legitimately does have the opportunity here to change this narrative around him not being a good passer or being a guy who is just a game manager. Let's go out to Stephen.
If Jalen Hurts goes out there and performs at an elite level, the Philadelphia Eagles could win another Super Bowl championship. And that's what you're looking at right there. And once that happens, then the narrative, he overcomes that. He's got to a Super Bowl, and then he goes out and he wins a Super Bowl this year. Then all of a sudden, we're looking at Jalen Hurts in an entirely different light. And
that is 100% true.
We're big up in him in a very big way.
So I don't care about the rest of the discourse. I don't care about because Cam Newton then kind of derails the segment, which he tends to do from time to time. But I think Stephen A. Smith is right. If Hurts goes out and makes it back to a Super Bowl and perform, play out the multiple scenarios, right? If Hurts is injured, doesn't look good this weekend, do you really hang the loss on Hurts if he's actually injured and can't move? Well, you probably put a lot of the blame on him, but then you might also put blame on Sirianni for rolling him out there if you have two other quarterbacks on your roster that are healthy. If he leads you to a win and you get to the Super Bowl and he gives you a similar performance like he did a few years ago against Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they somehow lose that game, but he's given you two exceptional Super Bowl performances, I don't think it changes the narrative a ton, but it does say he once again performs in the biggest games. So there's that. If they were to win this week, get to the Super Bowl, and he pukes in the huddle like Donovan McNabb, it won't hurt. It won't help his perception. Now, if Hurts goes out and leads you to a Super Bowl, and it doesn't look the best, right? He throws for 150 yards, but Saquon Barkley rushes for 175, and you win a Super Bowl. Are people going to look at Jalen Hurts as, one of the best quarterbacks in the league? Probably not, but they would have to call him a Super Bowl winner and also note the fact that he would be the first Eagles quarterback in the franchise history to go to multiple Super Bowls. There's something to that. So I do agree with him. I think that there's a potential narrative change that Hurts can go out and enact just by playing well and getting this team wins. Now, Flyer Spin Doctor says with the game manager version, not asking him to do too much, protect the ball, Eagles are unbeatable. I think, yeah, I don't like the narrative that he's just a game manager, because I've said this a bunch of times. It implies that he is akin to Trent Dilfer, which, no offense to Trent Dilfer, but Dilfer and Hurts aren't even remotely the same player. They're not even remotely the same quarterback. They didn't have remotely the same ceiling. To me, it's nonsensical. The only reason that you make a comparison like that is because you are really stuck on the semantics of game manager. Hurts goes out and does exactly what is needed of him to win. This guy could fundamentally screw the entire season up if he were to go out and play Carson Wentz hero ball. If Jalen Hurts were really that committed to only going after his own personal stats and pulled a Wentz, you wouldn't even be in this position right now. You probably would have gotten bounced against the Packers. But instead, he understands the guy who's lining up beside him, sometimes on the wrong side, if you believe that clip prior to the fourth quarter touchdown by Barkley. He knows that guy is really what makes the offense go in a big way. And he knows that he can trust his wideouts and his tight end. And he can trust that the line is going to give them enough time to make a smart decision before the ball is even snapped and then once it is. I don't call that a game manager. I say that's a really smart player, and that's a guy who is being selfless instead of what Wentz was often accused of, which was being selfish. Okay. Jamie, our resident Ravens fan, says it's okay, Russ. Plenty of offense to Dilfer. All right, well then fine. Okay, there was that, and then there was. Oh, I remember this. I want to piss you off a little bit before I build you guys back up with a little bit of positivity. Okay, I missed this the other day. I don't know how I missed this the other day. I'm actually, if I'm being honest with you, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I am. I'm embarrassed that I didn't have this on Wednesday. But, you guys might remember way back when I first started in doing anything around Philly media, I originally was one of the 3 co-hosts of the original Crossing broadcast with Kyle Scott and our dear friend Adam Lefko, who has gone on to have very big and great opportunities. Hosts a podcast with Shaq, does NBA on TNT. Great guy, salt of the earth guy. He hosted for a long time a show with one of the most miserable human beings. I'm trying to be really nice here, and I am definitely not commenting on the fact that this dude's haircut and the fully buttoned to the top shirt definitely makes him look like, somebody who would have been expelling groups from their country in like the 1930s. We're not gonna say that because we wouldn't say it's just not a nice thing to say. But Chris Sims is maybe the most miserable, smug human being covering football, and there are many of pundits who are kind of miserable that are covering football. But I have to give Kay Adams credit because she finally asks the question: what is your deal with the Eagles?
Have the best team, but you think that they'll be in a position right now this week going up against the Commanders where he will mess up. Why?
Oh, well, not mess up. I don't think that. I just think they got to play better. And listen, some of their struggles in their pass game, I don't put them all on him.
Him is referring to Jalen Hurts. If we remember, Sims has done these quarterback rankings a bunch of times, right? And a big part of the QB rankings that people had a problem with a few years ago was that, like, Hurts was really low on that list coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. And it almost felt performative to have him as low as he did. So people were like, all right, well, Sims just doesn't like Hurts. Like, there's something about, I don't know. What was it? Anyway, we're going to go back to him. We're going to try to give the guy the benefit of the doubt as we try to not puke on ourselves listening to him.
They're a little too simple with what they do in their pass game schematically. That's one of their big issues altogether. And as you saw yesterday with some of these long touchdown runs, they can run the ball on anybody. It doesn't matter how many people you put in the box. It's one of the greatest offensive lines in the history of football.
That is also fair. That is also accurate. Eagles have a sensational running game. That is why they were within 100-ish yards of setting the all-time single-season rushing record with Saquon Barkley. But he doesn't leave it at the positive. He has one of the dumbest bits of analysis you will have ever heard if you haven't heard it already.
What we see in Philadelphia. And they can win a lot of games the way they're winning right now and the way he's playing. I'm just saying if they want to maybe win this weekend or have to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, the passing game, the offense we saw, and again, not all Jalen Hurts, but what we saw yesterday, that will not get it done. They will not.
He's not necessarily wrong, by the way. If they are going to take the next step, and if they do get to a Super Bowl and they play the Bills, or the Chiefs, you are going to have to put up enough points. You are going to probably have to put up 28, 30 points to remain competitive in that game because it won't be an indictment of your defense. It's just that either Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes are going to get a lot of calls and they are going to make explosive plays. And try as you might, they're going to beat you at least a few times. We're getting very close to the stupidity, though.
Win the Super Bowl if that's the passing game we see, or even this week against the Commanders, right? I mean, that game yesterday, let's say it was 130 plays. The Rams definitely won the majority of those plays.
130 plays. The Rams won the majority of those plays.
If it's not for 2 strips by the Eagles defense.
If it's not for 2 critical takeaways.
And basically the 3 long touchdown runs.
And the 3 touchdown runs. 1 by Hurts, 2 by Barkley.
I would say you take away those 5-6 plays there, the Rams football team won the majority of the plays on the field in the game that day. That shouldn't be. The Eagles didn't play their best ball, and they got to find ways to throw the ball a little bit better because they got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who I would argue is the best duo receiver in football, too.
This man gets paid to analyze football. This guy has a national platform. Was he a Nepo hire because his dad worked at CBS, was a much more successful quarterback than he was? Maybe. I'm just trying to rationalize. I'm just trying to understand this. And it happened days ago. I'm just trying to understand. He says the Eagles ran 130 plays against the Rams, but the Rams won most of those plays if you take away 2 critical takeaways by the defense and 3 big touchdown runs by Hurts, Saquon, and Saquon. Well, if you take away those 3 touchdowns and those 2 big, takeaways, the Rams won most of those plays. This is almost as stupid, arguably even more stupid, than when Micah Parsons said after the Eagles blew out the Cowboys, well, if you take the scoreboard away, take away some of those big plays, we actually, played them pretty close. What? I'm sorry. Sims makes how much money? Let's be conservative. Sims makes at least $200,000. At least. Likely more. Let's say he makes $200,000 to analyze football across a few platforms. $200K for that kind of analysis. Oh boy. I know that people say that ESPN has devolved into this hot take, almost clickbaity sort of thing. I get it. We sometimes take FS1 to task on this show for almost performative takes. Chris Sims saying that the Eagles lost most of the plays against the Rams, unless you take away those takeaways and the long touchdowns. That is lunacy. Absolutely psychotic. Holy shite. What are we doing?